Good evening, everyone. This is Tala with Drive-thru Therapy. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight on another episode. And as always, I'm grateful for your support. As a person who works on herself and happens to be a therapist, I think that there is such a wonderful thing in knowing that other people are also working on themselves. I get the privilege to be involved in other people also attempting to make changes in their life. And it's always important to remember that nothing changes if nothing changes. If you have been working on yourself and you're doing things, right, to work on yourself, what we need to do is experience the challenge of change. If there is no discomfort in the new decisions you're making or the new actions you're taking, if there's no element of discomfort, more than likely we're still in our comfort zone. So change is uncomfortable. Change is new. And so it's accepted and expected both that it will be uncomfortable and that's okay. That's how you know you're doing it right, when it's uncomfortable. So that's my challenge, my clue for me as well, that when I experience something uncomfortable, there's a lot in it for me. There's a lot of lessons in it for me. There's important information in this for me, for my growth. And so I don't shy away from those situations, but I know they're difficult and I know they're challenging. And when it comes to surviving or resiliency is being able to bounce back from adversity, it really is important to accept that resiliency asks us to move forward. If emotionally I'm not moving forward and I find myself stuck on a feeling, identifying with a feeling, with a situation, with a negative past, with trauma, if I'm not moving forward from that, that's my cue to start working on what I need to work on and get uncomfortable. The average person would rather stay in the suffering because it is comfortable or it is known versus going into the unknown of what it would look like to use another method of, coping and that I may have no memories in. It's very difficult to go to that place of unknown. So when people change, it is truly an act of intention. It's intentional and it's uncomfortable. Really, those are the characteristics of change I've learned. When the average person experiences this discomfort, they usually pull away. They usually like, oh no, I don't want the discomfort. I don't want the discomfort. So doing this for a while, pulling away every time I experience discomfort, avoiding, consistently avoiding and consistently pushing away or not dealing with something, that trains my body to have this muscle memory that every time I feel discomfort, I go into distraction mode. I go into doing everything else instead of just confronting what these uncomfortable feelings are about. And that is our topic today, basically, is how to confront ourselves when we suffer. And the most incredible form of suffering for us as humans is when we perceive failure. Now, I'm not a complex person, so my favorite definition of failure comes from Wikipedia. And it is a social concept. Failure is a social concept of not meeting desirable or intended objectives. So I like that it says it's a social concept, meaning it's just an idea. And we all, as a society, accept the concept of failure. Not meeting an outcome that's desired is considered a failure in our society. We've learned that, right? So if I don't get an A, which is a desirable outcome, I failed. Or if I don't get married by a certain time, I failed. If I do not achieve something that I want to achieve, and something else comes out as an expected outcome, I may even consider that a failure. So even if it's not a bad outcome, it may be, in my mind, considered a failure. This is our social programming. So I'm not necessarily shocked at this definition, but it is my favorite one to identify what we socially accept as failure. Now, with the social concept, with the social idea of failure, this is a rough ride because it's pretty clear-cut shot. And it's going to take you to the same place every time, is that I'm just going to focus on the idea that I did not achieve my desirable outcome and that I accept that it's called a failure and that I'm a failure, right? Not just that it's a failure, but I'm a failure. Now, my parents may have taught me this. They've accepted it as part of their generation. The previous generation also before that may have accepted that a term or a concept of failure. And so we deliver it to the next generation. So we as parents get scared when we're trying to handle the concept of failure with children. I think it really becomes fear driven. So most of the time, very little being taught properly by our parents, because they didn't know really about how to fail. Again, failure is a social concept. So I just even want to dilute the idea of failure altogether because it's not necessarily failure, but we automatically think an undesirable outcome is failure. Going back to how this is developed, when parents attempt to teach about losing and failure, the most common response when a child fails at something or doesn't get something, the parent responds in a fear-driven way. They tell them the clear-cut obvious, which is like, you got an A, you got a C, you need to get an A, or you need to get a B, or you need to do better, you need to do more. And so the child learns to develop this inflexible, rigid idea of outcomes, right? They don't consider that there's other things in their life that they cannot control or that they would not have known about. So this inflexibility, this rigid way of thinking that I just did not get what I wanted, I put the effort in, but I didn't get what I wanted, and I failed, without considering any other possible solution or idea, this in itself will leave us emotionally stuck. And then in that way, I become what is called the failure. Not that I did not get a desirable outcome, but I am a failure. And then I consistently reinforce that. And because it's a social concept, other people will freaking agree with me. Like, this is what's crazy, is that we've accepted this as a social concept and others will confirm it or reinforce it for me. Today, we're going to learn how to fail, if you will. And if you are a parent, we're going to help you today by learning how to do it yourself. You're going to learn how to teach it in your children. The thing is, when we fail at something, we think it's a failure, right? Part of our thought process is that we're in full control of every aspect here, or most aspects, right? But we don't consider the other things we have no control over. And so we focus on what we solely had control over and why we didn't get this large, significant outcome or even a small outcome. We didn't get this outcome and we can't consider any other reasons that are gentle or kind or even realistic at this point. So for example, let's say I take a licensure test and I don't pass it. Let's say I'm just like, oh my God, I studied, I did everything I could do, but I just focus on the fact that I failed. And because I am so focused on the fact that I failed, I will not do anything else to make it better or move forward or use this information wisely. And so what I'll do, I'll just focus on being a failure and I don't want to fail. And then I'll overthink this licensure test. Now, I will put it off and not take it again because I don't want to experience this failure. and it just will torment me. It'll keep me from taking a risk and seeing the world in a flexible way. And so I corner myself into this outcome and it becomes emotionally stuck. I can't say that enough, I guess, because that's exactly what it looks like to me when I'm seeing it in another and what it feels like in me. So if I did not pass my licensure test, so in a resilient sense, we need to consider that I really did not know what was on that test. Now I have a better idea what's on that test, what it feels like, what it looks like, and I couldn't have known it had I not taken that test. So this information is very useful, very useful. And no information that comes from not getting a desirable outcome, no information in that process is useless. It is all very useful. When I understand that, then the next time I take a test, which will be after I study, the next time I'll take a test, more than likely I will get a better score because of the simple fact that I've accepted that, hey, I didn't know what I didn't know, but now I know a little bit more, and so I could do more with that. So it was useful to me. So right after me identifying the undesirable outcome, I have a solution for it. I understand it. I'm able to process it and move forward with it. The information becomes movable rather than energetically stuck. So I want you to understand, and I want you to even feel it out when I'm thinking I failed at something or I lost something. Energetically speaking, I don't want you to stay stuck, right? So I got to move you energetically or emotionally to the next place. We got to move to the next location. So thinking about it, it's like I got to get you energetically to not focus and replay the problem over and over and over and over and over again, and that you failed at it. And there's an underlying tone there of the need for perfection, but I have a different episode on that, so I didn't want to go into that too much. But all of this is just kind of a circular thought process that keeps me emotionally stuck. So I got to move energetically forward. I got to work on accepting what occurred. So the first thing we got to do to lose beautifully, again, our parents don't really teach us how to lose beautifully. We're just afraid. And what they teach, unfortunately, is that it should not happen. You should not be losing. And so we get stuck in that it shouldn't have happened this way. It shouldn't have. What did I do wrong? It shouldn't have happened this way. It shouldn't have happened this way. And we're stuck in this idea when we get an undesirable outcome, okay? Which is just focusing on the problem. There are no strategies to move forward here. It's just focusing on how you weren't good enough or you weren't perfect or you didn't get it right. You're just so involved in that self, in that ego that it shouldn't fail. So unfortunately, we are not resilient that way. This is where our resiliency is lacking. But we can focus on correcting that. So by moving forward, and this is first accepting the problem as it is, like this is it. It's just the outcome, accepting the outcome as it is, like it's right, like just like the way it is. Not that it should have been different. It is what it is. It came out the way it came out, and that's how I need to look at it as presented. Even if it's uncomfortable, friends, I need to push forward. That's what resiliency means. I'm able to bounce back when from adversity, from disappointment, from suffering. I need to bounce back. So accepting the information as it is. I'm not doing anything funny with it. It's just as it is. And really practicing this skill of accepting harsh truths. Hey, I did not pass a licensure exam. So that's accepting it. So that's not the issue. I don't need to keep repeating it, saying it shouldn't have been this way. And then I start blaming like everybody else. Like the test was I just didn't know what was going on at a test. And then the testing place was really loud. I couldn't get I could go on and on blaming other people rather than accepting what's in front of me. I just accept this outcome. And then my next thought needs to be, all of it is for my highest good. I need you to implement this part here. All of it is for my highest good. Yes, even when I don't pass a test. Yes, even that. You're just going to have to implement that. Because if you think you're able to control every aspect of your life, that thought process will keep you in a rigid state, an inflexible state. You're not going to be able to bounce back. You can't control everything, but there are lessons that we're going to be confronted with, life lessons, if you will. And these lessons come in from a source that we have no control over it, called life. And these lessons are all intentional. I want you to think that even the suffering that you're going through, even the suffering that you're going through is intentional. I know what you're thinking, like Tala. Really? It's intentional, the suffering? Yes. The suffering is not to stay in suffering. The suffering is not to stay in it, friends. The suffering is to help us grow. Because I'd have to do the thing right after I accept the suffering in that moment. Accept doesn't mean I have to agree with it. I just stay there. Accept means I see it as it is, right? This suffering, this uncomfortable place, this disappointment, I see it. But then the next part that's going to help with movement and with resiliency is to discover the meaning of the suffering. What would this be trying to teach me? Because I have to climb out of it. So if I climb out of it, I need a certain skill, a certain acceptance, understanding, something that I need to grow in specifically before I climb out of this sufferable situation. We really got to look at suffering from a whole nother perspective. We got to look at disappointment from a whole nother perspective. These are your opportunities. These are the opportunities that get you closer to growth and closer to freedom. They help you develop what needs to be developed. Without the suffering, there is no growth. If I'm always in my comfort state, there's no growth there, friends. There's nothing to be challenged. I'm just sitting there. But when I do experience discomfort, then this is the opportunity for me to get comfortable. And me getting comfortable, I'm going to, again, develop a skill that is the situation is asking me to do, to develop the skill. There's something that I teach my son. I'm going to let you in on that because I've learned from working with a lot of people that this idea is very constant in our psyche, that we are just afraid to fail. Again, it's a social concept we all accept. Just we don't teach kids how to truly fail beautifully. Like there's a benefit to it. Okay. I teach my son, okay, I say there are no problems, and he'll say there's only exit plans. Great. That's how we do it back and forth. So I'll just randomly say, there are no problems. And he'll say, there's only exit plans. Wonderful. I like to teach him this because while he's thinking about a problem, I don't want him to stay too long in the problem, cyclically, repeating it over and over again, how he shouldn't have done it. I want him to move, okay, the next thought comes in, there are only exit plans. So it's like, I want him to discover right where he's standing, where is his exit plan? There's always an exit plan to expect. I want you to be an expectant person of the multitude of exit plans that you can develop from a problem. So I want him to think that there are no problems that you can't develop an exit plan for, but you have to accept that the problem is there as it's being presented, an undesirable outcome, an unintended outcome, an unexpected one. All of this needs to be accepted with very little resistance, so that my next step is like, okay, what's my exit plan? It's not for me to keep looking at the problem over and over again. That's just my social programming to do that. So today it's like, I got to look, okay, where are my solutions? And I've known people that, and it's actually very common, that talk about the problem over and over and over and over again. They'll call up people and make the problem larger. So it starts off in their head, and then they call another person, they involve another person energetically in their problem. And this keeps going, just traveling everywhere. So I'll call my mom, I'll call my dad, my cousin, my best friend. I'll repeat the problem over and over and over again. When you're doing this, you're not practicing resiliency. Okay. You're making a problem energetically, physically there, present, instead of transforming the energy. You're keeping the energy going in its same form. The beautiful thing about energy is that its ability to transform, and you are a manipulator of energy in a lot of ways. And in some circles, we are told that humans are here on this earth to learn how to manipulate energy in a wonderful way. Beautiful creators, humans are. And so in knowing that, we do have to implement this wonderful life lesson of I can manipulate energy. Also, there is a problem. There are also exit plans. The same thing that brings me suffering, which is the problem, can be transformed in what brings me freedom and growth. So we need it. We need to accept the contrast, and that both beautifully work for my highest good. I need this contrast. I need those lessons. Without them, I don't grow. I don't experience an ultimate freedom, if you will. Just remember that when my son, for example, comes to me and he has a problem, almost always ask him, what would you like to do? And the next question, what would you like me to do? And I'm there with him, and we both collaborate, because that's the word with children here. We collaborate to work together, developing how we want to solve this problem. The reason is that I want my son to always have the ability to trust himself to solve a problem, because they want guidance and they can trust an adult. They'll always go to adult to say, help me, just help me. And some things, yes, they need help with. Other things, they need encouragement in. So what we do is encourage the child to solve the problem age appropriately. You are teaching them a lesson for a lifetime. You're teaching them how to fish for themselves for a lifetime instead of fishing for them. That's why we got to learn how to lose beautifully, not think it shouldn't happen, not teach a kid that it shouldn't be done, that it's terrible. You know, if my son, for example, and this has happened, if my son doesn't pass his spelling test, I don't sit there and tell him, you should have passed. Why didn't you study? What I do is, instead of doing all that nonsense, I incorporate the spelling words in different ways. So we play games. I help him put it on the fridge. We do high fives. We do a little dance with every word. I will use what he's allowing me to do to include those words in his day. So while I'm doing that on a daily basis, I'm including those words. We're playing games. We're writing them on the fridge. We're, doing flashcards, whatever we need to do, all in fun. And he's not even knowing we're studying. We're just doing that together. Then he's set up with the skill set, because I had to learn from that problem, that quote unquote air quotes here, problem that is called not passing the spelling test. What we do is it's pretty easy. I just include and expose him more to the words. So eventually he'll have a better knowledge that if he does take that test, he more than likely will be able to access this information of how to spell this specific word, because he's been exposed to it. Okay. Not because I told him and I lectured him and you shouldn't, and I'm making him feel guilty. Now that's a shortcut that a traditional parenting does. Is like I'll yell at him and I'll tell him that, you should have studied. Why didn't you tell me that we have a spelling test? And I could do I make that scene and blame him, or I collaborate with him. I do it with ease. It can be done. He does his part, I do my part, and we both do it together, and we collaborate to have a solution for this. I don't focus on the problem. The problem is labeled. It's out there. It didn't get a passing score for the spelling test. That's cool. I need this information so I can implement a strategy. That's all this information is useful for. The spelling test is just to tell me where he's at, and so I can use this information to help him on developing a strategy for it. Cool. That's what we do. We don't need to sit on the problem and keep telling him that you are your spelling test. Darn it. You should have gotten a perfect score. How could you not pass? So-and-so got a better score. Everybody you need to study more. Like, doing all this nonsense is just this. He's going to be left with this self-talk for a lifetime, because unfortunately we hear our parents in our head, even if we leave their home. We hear how they have learned to deal with failure and undesirable outcomes. We've learned that. We've learned how to deal from that with how we were talked to as children. So we're going to echo that in our mind. We're going to think it's our voice, but it really isn't. It's just generationally inherited. Now, our parents didn't know what they didn't know. That's okay. But today our responsibility is, when we know more, then we could do more with this information. So that's what this point is. I really wish that we've learned about how to fail gently, and the purpose and the value of unintended outcomes, that they're all intentionally there to help us through life. They're not there to focus on and to assess my value with. They're there to help me move to the next level. Really, truly. I can't think of one time that an unintended or undesirable outcome didn't happen to me where me learning how to get out of it took me to the next upgrade in my life. If I wouldn't have never been to the next upgrade or knew what I was capable of, had I not had this unintended or quote unquote failing outcome. without this failing outcome, there's no way I would have known what I'm made of. So suffering serves a purpose. When we study resilient people, we've learned that they believe that suffering serves a purpose. So they don't stay on it too long. They come up with the exit plan right away. That's what our research tells us about resiliency. That's how, when we study survivors, that's what the first thing that comes to mind for them. That's how they move forward or bounce back well. So I hope that this is helpful to you, because again, I wish we would have learned it from our family, and I wish our parents would have learned it from their parents, and so on and so forth. The good news, though, is that it starts with us. And there's no problem here being a generational breaker of some sorts, where I am not just raising my kid, but I'm raising my kid's kid and my kid's kid, and so on and so forth. And when I'm gone, I want my child to sit with himself on, let's say, on the worst day. And the first thing that he's going to be trained to hear a voice inside of him say, the first thing he's going to say is, I want him to think, what are the exit plans? On his worst day, on a failing outcome, what do I need to learn from this? Where's my exit plan? What do I need to learn? That's what I want him to come up with. That's the gift I can give him in this lifetime when I'm gone. So my influence on him, I'm thinking, better be that. It better be that. Because if I think I have the full solutions for him, and I teach him that I have the authority over him to make decisions in his life and to tell him what feels good to him, then I am doing a disservice to him. And I want to make sure that I do it as best as I can, learning from the people that I speak to and the suffering I've encountered, what people get stuck on. So I have a lot of information in that. I've gathered it. And this is what I've learned from suffering. And watching people suffer and experiencing suffering myself, and the benefit of climbing out of it. And let me just tell you, as long as you're alive, there's nothing you can't climb out of. Nothing, I assure you. Let's fail, and let's fail beautifully. Let's celebrate failures even better. And when we teach kids how to do that, now we're talking resiliency. Now we're talking a generational change in resiliency, instead of keep reinforcing a social concept of failure that really will not get us eventually anywhere. It'll just keep repeating nonsense and the need for perfection, which is not the human superpower. Perfection is not our superpower, friends. As humans, our superpower is how really not getting something right or not having this intended outcome and learning from it. That's truly our superpower, instead of thinking that our need for perfection is. Hopefully this helps you guys out on your journey. I know this is not just talking to you. This is talking to myself and talking to my boy that I hope one day listens to this when he misses me. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I'm sending you love and light. And remember, failure is delay, not defeat. This has been an episode of Drive-thru.